Spiderman, Leslie, A True Love by Switch Down. In a small town in the Midwest, a girl by name Leslie was born. She had a very normal family. She was the only child, but much of her childhood has been very much different. Most of the children in school avoided her at all costs. They even called her freak, monster, and even human hybrid because she was actually not as a normal person. In fact, she was actually a half human and half cat. It turns out her father was actually a humanoid cat who was actually from another world. So, so she's half alien, half human. But she didn't bother them. It seems after that her father passed, her mother had to raise her from age 9 and upwards. Her mother had to work a lot of almost two part-time jobs to support her, since her family was very poor and she didn't have afford to almost anything. And her mother, she tried to support and provide her daughter with all the things she needed. The food, basically a basic home to stay at. But every time, for every time for a few months, her mother had a very hard time to struggle. And even during the time when the final crisis happened from time to time, it seems the family was almost couldn't have enough money to pay the rent, the bills, and her mother was terrified to send that they were end up on either the street or in a shelter. But in some unusual way, her mother actually got promoted at her work, one of his first work, because her boss saw how much she actually struggled in life, but at the same time providing for her daughter. And from that, life seems to be getting better for Leslie. And when she moved to another town at age 12, she actually started to receive a lot of friends. But she was getting bullied at that school as well, but she didn't bother that to happen. Even as some of her new friends actually stood up for her, protected her from those bullies. But when she was 18, all these bad comments or bullying is suddenly stopped. But most of the time her mother wasn't even home. When from 18 she still lived at home, her mother, who has suddenly been feeling ill lately, she tried to provide her daughter with some basic things that she needed to go to finish college. But unfortunately, her mother passed only a year later in cancer. And Leslie, she was still middle of the college studies, but suddenly since her family was now gone and she fell into depression. She basically didn't know what to do. She skipped classes for some time and her grades started falling, and she was nearly close that she probably would have ended up in the same way because she lived at college and she had to sell her mother's home because she couldn't stay there. She had no money to pay the rent for the house and the school, so she had to do sell either house or drop off in college. But she sold all the items that she had in the house, but except keeping some of the photos and other personal items, and sold the rest. She moved to a small apartment in the school, in the town. But after that, she had was hoping to have a better dream, just a better life. Until one day, when she was 20 years old, she received a work opportunity not unless in New York. She had actually been promoted, get an opportunity to work on the local newspapers in New York. Since, since she had studied journalism throughout the school years, and she had actually the opportunity to study there, and even perhaps became a part-time journalist. But part of this scholarship from the become as a journalist, it provided her a small apartment in New York, closest to her work, and also that she would have enough money to pay for her rent even then. She was so excited she actually accepted this scholarship and moved straight to New York, leaving all the things behind. But when she came to New York, everything seems to be much different. She had never actually been in such a big city. Most of her life, she had grown up in a small town, maybe less than a few hundred to nearly 2,000 people, but living in a city from 8 to 9 million, it was overwhelming her. Seeing so much people, so much stores, so many buildings, skyscrapers. She only been seeing those in pictures, but never been to such a big city ever. At the same time when she was in the town, she was in her apartment, getting ready for her things, when she saw something pass by her window. She thought that maybe it's a pigeon, but it was big enough, it was too big for a pigeon, the size of a person. But she thought, but how could that even be? She was on the 10th floor of the building, and no people could be just swinging by. She looked over the window and saw him. She saw the local hero, Spiderman. She was intrigued. That was actually the first time she ever saw him in person. But she has read a lot of stories lately about just Spider-Man. But the next day when she came to work, she ran into a young man named Peter Parker. Seems that he was the photographer for this the same newspaper where she was going to work at. The boss, he just yelled at her saying, "You do that and you do that." And she tried to focus mostly at that. She tried to even talk to some of the employees, try to get to know some of each other, maybe to at least open up to be friends. But it happened that some of the people there actually looked at her, whispered, "How she could be a half cat and half human? How's that even possible?" But since out some of the workers there know about her past, seems that her father was a alien. Alien? Are you even sure? Yes. You never remember that? But 40 years ago, this group of cat aliens arrived to Earth, asked for building a colony here. Yes. It turns out one of them actually was her father. Oh, many, but many didn't bully her. This is curious to see how that happened, and she didn't mind that because they didn't talk bad about her. She actually heard that they were talking about why she's had a cat tail, but she didn't mind it. But at the same time, Spider-Man or slash Peter Parker has been working very hard lately because being a superhero and as a photographer for the newspaper, everything seems everything seems to be going so well lately. But 3 months ago, something did happen. He actually had asked Mary Jane, his girlfriend at the time, asked her to marry him, and she said yes, but only a week later she died. She died during a car accident, and he took it seriously hard. His aunt tried to comfort him, but this was actually much too serious for him. He was considered to quit to be the Spider-Man. He often sat in his own bed in his apartment or his own buildings, watching the city while still being Spider-Man. But at the same time, he knows if he decided to quit to be the Spider-Man, he knows that Mary Jane doesn't want him to quit because of his loss of her. So, in order to memory of her, he decided to keep up as Spider-Man to protect the world and especially New York. So for the next couple of weeks, Spider-Man protected all his time in New York. But at the same time, Leslie, she had actually started getting used to this new work, and she even had to get used to the boss that tried to scream at her, what to maybe get some coffee for him, to send his pictures to the press, make sure that everything seems to be working. But she tried it at least over and over and over to make this work actually be a success. She wanted to be a journalist, but the boss, he seems to almost didn't believe that she could be a journalist and almost trying to psychic her down, saying girls should not be reporters. They should just stand in the office typing but not be out there as journalists or something. But she didn't care because it happened a few times when she was with Peter Parker to those local art places to help. And he actually was close to her, helping her to get used to this. And he even somehow kind of took her as a student to train her the powers to how to be a journalist and even at the same time have to be a photographer. And that was actually something that she actually did enjoy. But at the same time, she get actually getting used to being near Peter because she likes him. She's a very charming, very kind, very sweet person. But she had no idea about his double secret life. But that all changed. One night, when she was going home, she ended up in trouble. Turns out 4 guys walked out in an alley in front of her, surrounded her, forcing her to try to give them her belongings, like purse, money, cell phone, anything that she had value. But she didn't want to. She refused them. But 2 of the guys behind her grabbed her arm and they tried to force her with a knife once again to give her. But she said no. At the same time, she screamed for help. She was hoping at least a police officer nearby could hear her, but nothing. It seems the street was empty, and she believed she was going to die. But then, she closed her eyes, and she heard screams. When she opened, the guy was gone, but not entirely gone. She looked up, and there was hanging there in spiderweb. Seems that Spider-Man caught him, and and then he actually stand behind her, and she thanked him, and suddenly she actually ran up to him, and for some unusual way, he actually didn't stop her. She removed part of the mask, but then he stopped her, and then kissed her. But then something did actually happen. She noticed a bit scar on the left cheek. He immediately pulled down the mask and said goodbye and ran off. At some point there, she didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but the next day at work, she actually ran into Peter when he was getting off for another assignment from the boss. She noticed a small scar on his left cheek. At first, she didn't pay much attention to it, but later, after he left, it reminded her about Spider-Man's scar. But that could be something as coincidence. Could be just a random scar, like many do has. Maybe he just has been shaving or something, a small scar or something. But so she didn't pay attention to it. But for next couple of days later, she actually got in trouble a second time. But this time was actually two guys, two large men, tried to rob her a second time. But luckily for Spider-Man was in the area, stopped them, and she actually did the same thing again. She kissed him and saw the same scar, but this time a little bit a small bruise around the same area. And the next day at work, she ran into Peter again and noticed the small scar and the small bruise in the area. Then she actually understood he was Spider-Man. She knew it now, but she didn't say a word to anyone because if she did, the secret would be out. All he people want to start running into him, and the bad guys, especially those his arch nemesis, the Venom or others, would know his true identity and would attack him. Anyone who is close to him, friends, co-workers, anyone. So after that, around lunchtime, she asked him if they could have some talk, and since he had not much to do, so he did. And he actually was curious what I was going to talk about, and she said, "I know you're Spider-Man, Peter. You must be mistaken. No, I remember that Spider-Man had a small scar and bruise on his left cheek, as you do. But have you told anyone else about it?" He asked, but whispering. And she shook her head, said no, because she would never do that because in the fear of his life. So it turns out Peter actually had been have a small crush on her ever since he saw her, and he told her, and she asked him if the tail which she has was bothering her or bothering him, but he said no, because he said that she is very beautiful, and she kissed him again, but this time the kiss seems to be lasting longer, almost an eternity, and now she knows he was his true love. But after this kiss, Peter he actually pushed Leslie away, and he said he didn't feel ready for a new relationship after what happened to his fiancée, and she remembers from my coworkers and told her about Peter's fiancée, Mary Jane, and she apologized and then left. Peter actually told her aunt the same night about this, and his aunt was just said, "Peter, you are foolish. When you finally meet a new girl who loves you, and you're pushing her away, do you think Mary Jane wants you to do this? She wants you to be happy. So why did you push this girl away from you? It clearly she loves you." But Peter actually loved Leslie as well, but he couldn't do anything about it because he didn't want her to be hurt. Even though she knows his secret makes her even more in dangerous position. That night, Peter he couldn't sleep, so he decided to take a swing around in town just to be having a better clear his mind. And he passed Leslie's apartment. She was still awake, reading some newspaper, doing some work, and she saw him behind the outside window. She asked him to come in, and he did. And they had a small talk, and he explained to her why he pushed her away, and she was actually explaining that she understood. But then he said that he wanted to be with her. She realized he actually meant it. Peter then kissed her, and but he promised her to keep her safe. And of course, she managed to say that she would never, never to anyone reveal his true secret. And for of course, the next couple of days after, they spent a lot of time together, but then it happened when he had to go away during saving the cities. But she didn't mind that. And after nearly 4 years of being together, Peter, he felt ready to propose to Leslie, even though that she knows it might be putting her in more danger, but she didn't care. She actually said yes, and his aunt, she were more happier than ever. Of course, Peter even though that most of his life has actually never been in much of big trouble. But Leslie, deep down she knows that Peter will never harm her, always be there in every matter what. And of course, they actually got married around spring. And they even celebrated the honeymoon in New York, just in case if something would happen. And of course, and even his aunt welcomed Leslie as part of the family. But then, 2 years later, Leslie informed Peter that she was actually pregnant. They were going to have twin daughters. And of course, he actually didn't expect that. And Peter, he was beyond happy to be a father. And then, a few months later, the children was actually born. Their first daughter was named Tara. Tara was like her father, but she didn't have any of his powers except the spider sense. She was very eager to learn more about journalism like her father, but she preferred by writing rather than being out in the world to experience the dolphins. But she was very eager to learn more, and she was very open to be with her sister, Lila. Lila was more different. Lila was more like her mother, but she preferred to be more outspoken. She even sometimes when she was in her 20s, she actually went more out dancing, and she actually became a dancer, and she even started a school of dancers in New York. But then, after that the twins were only 5 years old, Peter and Leslie was going to have their third child, a son. Both Peter and Leslie were so excited to have a son, but all the excitement faded when they found out when their son was going to be named Jones, he didn't make it when he was born. Leslie took it seriously hard, but Peter and her twin daughters was there to support her and cheer her up. Even Peter deep down was hurt to losing his son, but he knows that he has twin daughters to look after. But he now has to make sure that both his daughters are safe from any danger, including his wife Leslie. And that's how Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker, and Leslie from the True Love got a family. The end.